In the early years of the 21st century, three transmedia franchises captured the hearts of young audiences and became known as the Big Three: Harry Potter, Twilight, and The Hunger Games. Hunger Games is mainly known for starting this whole era of young adult dystopian fiction books, and for the past decade it is strongly associated with the craze of the dystopian genre, which dominated the book scene with the Holy Trinity franchises including The Divergent, The Maze Runner, and, of course, The Hunger Games. Though Divergent and The Maze Runner were not engraved into this Hall of Fame of the young adult fiction genre, in my humble opinion. It is simply crazy to think that The Hunger Games were released 15 years ago in 2008, and the first book was a pure reflection of the events that the world was facing back then, starting with the financial crisis, which added the sense of panic and uncertainty about the future. And Hunger Games served as an expression of those concerns. This trilogy was standing on the crossroads which diverged into the magical path of Harry Potter and the tempting vampire road of the Twilight, and Hunger Games chose a new, not yet explored path of the young adult dystopian fiction. This shift from the wizard and vampire romances to teens fighting for their lives in the government-organized spectacle shows us how the culture changed. And though the general public usually thinks that Hunger Games is just another cliché dystopian tale, I think this story is much deeper and much more complex than the public tends to think. Hunger Games' story is based in the world of Panem, formerly North America, after a devastating civil war. As a way to symbolize their past uprisings, each district is obligated to send a young tribute to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a televised event where the participants must fight to the death. Katniss, which is a main protagonist, hails from the District 12, known for its coal mining industry. When Katniss's young sister Primrose is chosen as a tribute, Katniss bravely steps forward to take her place, and she is accompanied by the male tribute, Peeta. These two are then whisked away to the capital, where they receive guidance from the somewhat reluctant mentor Haymitch. They undergo glamorous transformations at the hands of the professional stylists, share their stories in the televised interviews, and they are evaluated by the game organizers known as the Game Makers. As Katniss and Peeta are thrust into this treacherous arena, they eventually form an unlikely alliance, enacting a fictitious romance for the watching television audience. This strategic move is significant because the audience, known as the sponsors, has the power to send valuable items to their favorite tributes. And Katniss and Peeta figure out that by portraying a star-crossed lover story, they can capture the viewer's attention and, more importantly, their sympathy. The clever part here is that they are fully aware of how their narrative might be edited and shaped, highlighting the way such manipulations are accepted in a generation raised on reality TV. In the final book, Mockingjay, the rebellion against the oppressive capital gains momentum. Katniss becomes the symbol of the revolution known as the Mockingjay. The story follows her journey as she reluctantly embraces this role and the ongoing battle against the capital. District 13, which was thought to be destroyed, emerges as a stronghold for the rebellion. It becomes a central base for the military operations and strategic planning. And I know that this plot can be simply labeled as, oh, the Chosen One story. I think that there are so many underlayers which only add depth to the story. Unlike the typical coming-of-age stories, Katniss, being the eyes, ears, and the head of the reader, is not the chosen one. She literally volunteered for her sister Prim, and she was never meant to be a leader. And this is exactly why in the last book the revolution continues even without Katniss being present in the story while she was unconscious. One thing that makes me appreciate every page of Hunger Games a lot is the fact that the story is rooted in Greek mythology, specifically the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. In the myth, King Minos of Crete demanded that Athens send a tribute every 9 years, including 7 girls and 7 boys aged from 8 to 14, to face the deadly Minotaur in the labyrinth. The selection of the tributes was determined by drawing pottery shards from the baskets, with those who drew pieces marked with an X becoming the chosen ones. And the author of Hunger Games, Susan Collins, is a big fan of Greek myths. So in her story, she mirrored those events in the annual reaping, where young people are chosen to fight to death. Like Theseus, the main character, Katniss volunteers as a tribute. Katniss, just like Theseus, becomes a symbol of the defiance, and the story of Hunger Games is filled with references to Greek and Roman events. The name of the fictional country in our story, Panem, derives from the phrase panem et circenses, which is a Latin phrase that stands for bread and circuses. This phrase signifies the exchange of the entertainment for the needs and desires of the population. Essentially, it implies implies that if you provide people with food and entertainment, they can be persuaded to do anything. And people who are chosen to participate in the Hunger Games get the bread for the performance that they provide. These concepts are central to Collins's exploration of war and reality television. In Panem, in order to enjoy the entertainment, people must sacrifice themselves, and in order to obtain some food, they have to risk their own lives. A year's worth of grain and oil is referred to as tesera and is exchanged for another token in a lottery drawing. In Panem, the children of the districts must make the sacrifice, increasing their chances of becoming involuntary participants in a brutal form of entertainment. The capital itself draws several influences from ancient Rome, from its excesses to the names of its residents. The names of the game makers and capital citizens are reminiscent of figures from Roman history, like Julius Caesar, seen as the character Caesar Flickerman, the host of the Hunger Games, the philosopher Seneca, reflected as Seneca Crane, the head game maker, Lucius Cornelius Cinna, who inspires the character of Cinna, Katniss's silent and potential rebel, and other tributes like Cato, which is a reference to Cato the Younger, a determined and unwavering political figure in the late Roman Republic. On the other side, characters from the outer districts often have names that contrast with those from the capital and the career tributes. Katniss, her family, friends, and allies have names that reflect natural, plant-like, and healing qualities, which align with Katniss' father's knowledge of edible plants. Katniss, for instance, is named after the aquatic root plant Cigataria, also known as the arrowhead, and her father's advice to her was, "As long as you can find yourself, you will never starve." Primrose, Katniss's sister, has a self-explanatory name associated with a type of flower. Rue, another ally of Katniss in the arena, takes her name from a small mountain flower, and she also shows the expertise in healing plants to save Katniss. And of course, we will not forget about Pita, whose name can be attributed to a specific type of bread. The very name capital is a reference to the Capitol Hill in ancient Rome, which was the center of the religious and civil life. The cornucopia in the Hunger Games is a place where vital supplies are placed for tributes. The term cornucopia has its origins in Latin, where it means horn of plenty, representing the abundance and nourishment. In the capital's lingo, an avox is a person punished for rebelling against the capital, and this term is derived from the Latin word avox, which means voiceless. The cultural references in Hunger Games make the story deeper. In the world of the Hunger Games, society is divided into clear layers, making it extremely hard for most people to move up. The games emphasize this reality while offering a slim chance of escape for the winners. Victors live in a luxury and fame, but are somewhat separated from the home districts. In Panem, the divisions are not just social but also geographical. You can think of it like a difference between the center and the outskirts of the world. The districts are responsible for extracting resources and making things, while the capital's residents engage in various service jobs like cooking, styling, and entertainment, along with indulging in consumption. These divisions extend to the urban and rural areas, where the stark contrast between the artificiality of the capital and the harsh reality of District 12 becomes evident. District 12, with its coal mines and forests, which is actually inspired by a French book called Germinal, written by Émile Zola, in contrast to the capital's decadent maternity, characterized by excessive consumption and an obsession with appearances. When Katniss, the daughter of a deceased miner who survives by hunting, arrives in the capital on a high-speed train, it's like a collision between the 19th century and the 21st century media culture. This clash is highlighted by the extravagant appearances of capital's residents with their vibrant cosmetics, colorful hair, and fancy clothing. District 12, which is a community where everyone knows each other, it seems like the less fortunate 1% work for the benefit of the privileged 99%, which is an exception as District 12 is notably small. And with this system, with this plot, Hunger Games easily became the standard for the dystopian fiction genre. Thanks to the great marketing, including a 4-part screen adaptation of the novels, the young adult world was shattered and literally transformed, emerging from the vampire ashes. For those who have only seen the movies but never read the books, I am going to briefly go through some of the changes made and explain them, since I think the books are far better than the movies. Firstly, Katniss acquires the pin at the black market known as the Hub in District 12. She goes there to trade for supplies, and while browsing, she comes across the vendor Greasy Say, who sells her the Mockingjay pin. In the film adaptation, Katniss receives the Mockingjay pin from Madge Undersea, the mayor's daughter, a character not present in the books. Madge hands Katniss the spin as a token of remembrance of the day of the reaping. And I think this slightly changes the undertone of having this pin and giving it to Prim, Katniss' sister, and how it actually becomes the symbol of the oppression. Secondly, the thing that annoys me the most is the fact that movies were forcing this love triangle so badly, trying to drive the attention to the teenage love and not to the internal struggles of Katniss. And she had to go through a lot. And I think this bad marketing of trying to make the story seem to be about love and not about the PTSD and other problems that Katniss had to face, that's how people started to think that every dystopian book has to feature a romance, probably a love triangle, and that's why we are so fed up with this type of narrative. In the books, the love that Katniss experiences, how she has to make the choice between two boys, is not that exaggerated. And in the books, Katniss becomes the center of attention, mostly because she is a survivor of this cruel reality show, who wants nothing but peace, quietness, and safety for the people she loves. She was never trying to be a center of the revolution, nor she tried to pursue the boys. All Katniss wanted was to save her sister. And what is interesting about this is that Prim dies anyway, despite Katniss's effort to save her. And I think that this is a genius way to say that any revolution has its own problems, and there is never the right side you have to pick. And boys in this situation represents those two different sides of kindness and revolution, of fire and water, if you will. And besides, revolution in the general sense serves the purpose of creating a perfect, better world for the people, mainly young people. So people of Panem are fighting for their kids and the life that they can have. It's just the pure possibility, the utopia. But what they get in the end is that their kids actually get killed. And Prim, who is a young, kind girl who possibly had a chance of living in a good world, finally free, does not get this possibility. The third difference that just drives me crazy is the way they changed this scene with Peeta giving Katniss the bread. It was so weirdly filmed. While they tried to create this intrigue of why Peeta gave her the bread, why does he hate her, or maybe he was just kind to her, only later it is revealed that he actually burned the bread so he could help her. And this is so sad and bad, and I think it would be such a powerful move if they would show how Peeta expressed his kindness to Katniss, because this kindness was fueling her until the last hours of the Hunger Games and the Revolution. This simple act of kindness changed her tremendously, and that's why she became who she was in the end. And this confusion with two boys, the love triangle, benefited greatly to the misunderstanding of Katniss' personality in the movies, which led to some confusion for those who had only seen the movies. And with what I have just said, I think it finally starts to make sense why we never actually saw the revolution. We didn't even have to see it happening. This story is not about the revolution. It's not about how the world can be perfect, the utopian story. This is rather a story of how each personal destiny can be manipulated from both sides, and that there is simply no real, true, or correct answer to the question. The love triangle in the Hunger Games highlights how little control Katniss has over her life. She faces numerous challenges and traumas, from providing for her family to surviving the Hunger Games. This love triangle adds to her struggles because she can't explore her options or develop relationships at her own pace. Katniss wasn't really concerned about the romance at all, and the choice between Peeta and Gale is more about selecting between ideals and morality. Peeta embodies the peace, compassion, and kindness. He believes in avoiding killing and making it a personal choice. On the contrary, Gale is all about the rebellion. He's willing to do what is deemed necessary during the war. He is a hunter. So the decision that Katniss had to make between Peeta and Gale is a reflection of those different values and principles. What Katniss needed was the kindness, was the bread that Peeta could provide, and not the fire of Gale. She values kindness above all, partly due to her love for her sister Prim, and in the very beginning of the books, she distances herself from Peeta, fearing that he might be kind because it might lead to emotional complications. She cannot kill anyone if she knows that they're kind. Most people remember Hunger Games because of the movies, and movies definitely played a big role in Hunger Games' success. And actually, Suzanne Collins was closely involved with the screenwriting process, and perhaps that's why the movies were faithful to the source most of the time. The primary difference between the novel and the film adaptation is the narrative perspective. The novel is written in the first person, which creates this suspense in the film. In the novel, the first-person narrative makes us expect Katniss to survive. However, the shift to the third person in the film opens up the world beyond the arena. We get to catch the glimpses of increasingly tense meetings between President Snow and the chief game maker, Seneca Crane, which ultimately lead to Crane's death. We also get to see how Haymitch was doing his best to help his tributes. We also get to see the operations center where the decisions about the arena are made, and most importantly, the uprisings in some of the districts. Apart from these brief glimpses, our perspective remains centered on Katniss. Though sometimes the directors of the movie imitated the first-person perspective, getting into the head of different characters, which only added depth to the storytelling, making us feel as if we are the part of the games. The genius of this franchise is the fact that Hunger Games served as a distorted mirror for us. Just like the rich people of Panem, we are strongly attracted to the story as viewers and readers. We watch the movie through the lens of the game makers and their cameras. The directors make us feel as if we are from Panem. And that's how this metaverse of reality shows is created. When I was first reading the novels, I was around 12 years old at that time. I mainly remember all of the bad things that happened in the arena. Rue's passing, blowing up the food, Peeta's injury made me so tense. But those cliffhangers were the things that made me so captivated about the story I couldn't put away the book. And this is exactly what people of Panem feel. Suzanne Collins gave us the action, pointing out that sometimes this action is made on the expenses of the others. And what we do is that we watch people suffering. Suzanne Collins made the spectacle out of the war. The Hunger Games films are undeniably action-packed thrillers prominently featuring violence as a major narrative component. Each cinematic installment of The Hunger Game is not only highly entertaining, but it's also incredibly spectacular in every aspect. This was the strategy of criticizing a reality aspect of every reality show, exaggerating it, and feeding it to the public. This parallelism is shining through the narrative canvas. Hunger Games is a heavily meta-cinematic film adaptation that allegorizes on the construction and manipulation of the narrative within the narrative itself. Let's break it down. So the players make themselves likable to the audience of the televised Hunger Games so that the citizens will send material support during the prosecution of the tournament. In the Hunger Games, the tributes receive assistance from a prep team made up of mentors and stylists. Their guidance helps the tributes navigate the challenging experience and improves their chances of success. Katniss and Peeta's ultimate victory is partly thanks to their stylist Cinna and their performances during the pre-game interviews. This preparation process for the games has parallels for the beginning of any film. It is a multi-layered effort to market the main character to various audiences. This includes the people of Panem and the game makers, but also extends to the American audience and the global viewers of the film. The struggles of the actors to gain support within the cinematic world of the Hunger Games mirror similar efforts within the competitive American film industry. While the stakes in the cinematic game may not be life or death, the cost of failure, especially in financial terms, can be extremely high, with significant professional consequences. In order to win the games, the participants are obliged to undertake the professional physical training. A significant part of the story focuses on the preparation for the Hunger Games, and this preparation process is highly reflected in the marketing of the movie. The promotional materials for the TV, cinema, and the internet showcase that actors had physical trainings, with some footage seemingly interchangeable with the scenes from the movie. For instance, there is a clip where Jennifer Lawrence is shown running across the mat, performing rolls, turning to the side, and aiming her bow and arrow away from the camera. And it is challenging to tell if this footage was from the actual film or from behind-the-scenes rehearsal. And I think this metaverse, this sarcastic parody, is what makes the story so special. Suzanne Collins was great enough to create this beautiful story. And with that being said, I think that the books are 10 times better than the movies. If you have not read the books, I highly encourage you to open them and read them right now. Even to this day, they're just simply great. This is the end of this breakdown of the Hunger Games. I hope you like this. Subscribe to the channel, press the like button, and see you soon.